On today's show, why the Padres trading for Harrison Bader, Marcell Ozuna, or maybe both at this year's trade deadline absolutely makes a lot of sense.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network for your team every day for Wednesday, July 23rd. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for almost 6 years now, not just for this podcast, but various other outlets, including JustBaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Go check that out, and go check me out on the socials on Twitter /X and on Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, for any questions, comments, or concerns you might have. Today's episode, guys, we are talking about a whole bunch of things. Firstly, the Andrew Vaughn Principle. What is that? Going to talk about the Padres trade deadline strategy, reiterate what I've said for many episodes, and then we're talking about Harrison Bader and Marcell Ozuna individually and why both players could make sense as trade deadline acquisitions. So there's no time to waste. It's a fun show. Let's get into it. So what is the Andrew Vaughn Principle? You might be wondering, Javi, why are you prepared to start off your episode? My everydayers will know. The longtime listeners shall be rewarded. And they said, what's going on here? You hate the Brewers. Why are you about to start off your show the day in which you are traveling to San Diego? You are currently getting off at the airport right now, right? Getting off at the airport right now. You are stepping off the plane. And this episode is being played for listeners of this podcast. And this is what you do? You decide to praise the Brewers? Well, not necessarily. I just want to talk about Andrew Vaughn really quickly because he's one little microcosm of how I feel about the MLB trade line, which is that you can acquire a lot of value. You can have guys that are rentals, that are just decent players underperforming, for very little to help spruce up the kind of depth parts of your team, right? The Padres already have stars, so do they need to go out and just get another star? Do they need to go for Jarren Duran? I really don't think so. Right? And Andrew Vaughn I'm bringing up because, for a bunch of reasons. One, because it's just kind of funny. And two, because he's been playing great, right? We'll get into funny in a second. But he's slashing .333 with a .441 on base and a .630 slugging in 9 games with the Brewers. That's good for a .194 WRC+. That's amazing. And the reason it's funny is because they gave up nothing for him. And this is a guy who has been a disaster for who else but the Chicago White Sox, just like our boy Gavin Sheets, a former White Sox player. And hey, heck, speaking of former White Sox players, I was very in on, sarcastically, I wrote for Just Baseball if people want to go check it out, this jokey, silly article that I only maybe 20% believed in, but it was still fun, about Eloy Jimenez and why I'd absolutely buy in on him, because I'm buying in on the idea that the White Sox have no idea what they're doing. They have possibly the worst owner in all of sports. Yes, because he's not just ruining the White Sox, he's also ruining the Bulls. I know he's finally selling the White Sox, but still, shout out Jerry Reinsdorf. I just think that, is it a horrible bet to go after just White Sox players? Cease immediately better with another team, right? Yoan Moncada even this year, if you actually look at his overall numbers, he's actually been better than this year with just a few games with the Angels than he has been in like multiple years with the White Sox. It's been a while since he's been good. 0.6 wins over replacement isn't crazy, but it's 38 games. He's slashing .238, .338, .500 slugging. He's got a .131 WRC+. His expected weighted on base is pretty high. Like, Yoan Moncada playing okay, right? Like, I think it's funny that there's 3 players that teams got for nothing that have at least been pretty productive. Moncada in a smaller sample size, Andrew Vaughn in a very small sample size, and of course Gavin Sheets in what we've seen in just the first half. I'm bringing all this up to illustrate just the idea that, like, you don't have to trade for a big time player. You might be able to just get someone minor. And also what I'm alluding to, both things can be true. I absolutely wouldn't buy the Padres trading for Luis Robert, who, by the way, is the big name, right? Like, I feel like he is the big name, but he's slashing .273, .485, .500 slash line over his last 15 games. But here's my thing. With Luis Robert, I know that that's tempting. I know that you might look at this and say, Javi, you just named 3 White Sox players that are doing better. Let's bet on the Luis Robert change of scenery. We've been talking about this all year. I understand that. But with this situation, I am more just talking about how you don't have to go for a superstar, because there's maneuverability here. right? With a player like Luis Robert, right? Given his resume, his general image, his talent level that everybody talks about. Everybody's taken him high on their fantasy draft order before, right? And his recent success especially, he could cost significantly more, especially because he's got, some more years of control. Granted, he's a little bit pricey for the years, and I don't know if that'll take some other teams out. Maybe that'll make him cost less. And again, it's just a 15-game size that I went through. But what I would remind people is that if you have to give up an Ethan Salas for Luis Robert, would I do that? And let's just remember, the guys we've given up have turned out pretty good elsewhere. Look at currently James Wood. He's currently looking to become just the 6th player at 22 years old in the last 20 years to hit 30 home runs and steal 20 bases. The other players, Mike Trout, Raul Acuña Jr., Manny Machado, Julio Rodriguez, and Fernando Tatis Jr. Just to give you an idea, like, some of these guys might end up awesome. And I just don't think you have to blank your farm system to get a good player. If Luis Roberts' market is really small, then yes, go for it. But otherwise, I just want to bring up the Andrew Vaughn principle as reason to remind everybody that you can go for like a decent player at the deadline to help improve this team. I really think you can, right? Maybe it's the other side of a DH platoon with Sheets. Maybe that's what it is, right? You get someone to play DH and then Sheets plays in left field, right? Or someone plays in left field, Sheets plays at DH, whatever. Or you go out and get just a guy, right? Because you've seen the Braves won a World Series, guys, by just trading for some undervalued decent players. Jock Peterson, Eddie Rosario, right? I'm blanking on the Red Slugger. I forgot his name. Adam Duvall? Is that Adam Duvall? There we go. Like a bunch of players, Jorge Soler, that just had a really good second half. Now you're not going to hit on that many the way the Braves did. That was still absurd. But I'm just illustrating that to remember you don't have to go big, right? At least that's just my opinion. We'll have to see, because AJ Preller is probably going to go big. It is one of the most entertaining teams to watch at the deadline, and dare I say deadline of all sports. And free agency too. Whenever it comes to the period in which moves can be made, the Padres are always there. So even when they mess up, they're still super entertaining. But that's what I want to talk about in the first segment, just because it's possible. And even if it's not Robert, let me tell you, whoever does go for Robert, which someone probably will, I think he's going to be a beast wherever he goes. I really do. I just don't know how much he's going to cost. You know what I mean? The White Sox are in a weird spot. They might give him up for nothing. Or they might be like, look, he's done well, and we know you guys really want him, so give us what we want, or we'll just keep him another year and hope he's great next year to sell him even for an even higher price. So we'll have to see. But everybody, that of course does not mean we are done with today's show, guys. We got to talk about Harrison Bader and Marcell Ozuna and why they make for really good trade candidates for this Padres team, possibly the best yet. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. And that sponsor is one of the ones you heard at the top of this here podcast, and that is our friends over at Monarch Money. If you ever wish you were managing your money and you thought, man, I wish this was easier, I wish it was simpler. Well, with Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is also more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can check all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And what was one thing, folks, that I learned? Let me tell you. I got a budget better with the takeouts. The subscriptions, all those things, they help you out with that. And in general, they give you insights to invest better on certain things, how to save your money better. And if you share finances with someone, Monarch can also help you stay on the same page, one shared account. It's really, really great. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Go on and check that thing out. And just like that, everybody, we are back thriving and vibing here on today's podcast. I hope you're all doing good. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter/X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, and reach out on there if you happen to be in San Diego over the next week, because I am too. And I don't know, if you're at the game on Monday, then say hi. I'll also be at Comic-Con a bunch, so feel free to say hi to me if I'm there. Yeah. Crazy times indeed. Let's talk about Harrison Bader, guys. A player that has been on the radar for a while, at least according to one listener of the show. And I want to give a shout out to him because he messaged a while ago, Mr. @FoolishRex on Twitter, said Padres should trade a couple mid and low level prospects to the Twins for Harrison Bader. That's the middle market move you keep talking about. And by the way, he said this on June 25th. So yeah, he was early on this. Shout out to my guy at Foolish Relics. I agree, and I'd been thinking about him for a while too, and I do think that Harrison Bader makes a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons. Firstly, his slash line this year, just really solid stuff, right? 249, 330 on base, 438 with a 115 WRC plus, that's what that nets you, and 1.8 wins above replacement. Now you might be wondering, well, 12 home runs, like that's fine. That's a decent slash line. It's not bad, but like why 1.8? Because he's been a great defender, especially in left field. But in totality, with his overall, wherever he's playing in the outfield this year, he has 11 defensive runs saved, which is sixth most among all outfielders in the sport, and he has 6 outs above average, which is ninth among all outfielders in the sport. So he's been an excellent defender, and by the way, has been an excellent defender for a long time. And if the Padres were to acquire him and place him in left field, that would quite easily be the best defensive outfield in the game and potentially the best overall outfield in the game. And Harrison Bader, he ain't no Jarren Duran. I don't think he's going to cost nearly as much as a Jarren Duran would, because he's also, he's old, not old, right? He's not like, extraordinarily old. He's not going to be in a retirement home or anything like that. But he is 31 years old, and he's on a 1-year deal. He's an expiring contract. So this is the type of player that's going to move at the deadline, and with just $6.25 million owed this year, it's unlikely to cost too much for the Padres to give him up, and it won't hurt them financially the way that, say, I talked about on yesterday's show with Luis Robert, or a player like that might hurt them in terms of them being like, I don't know if we want to do this type of salary right now for this player, as opposed to this, which would just be for this 1 year, right? And furthermore, unlike Jesus Sanchez, which we brought up a while ago, because he's a guy that will cost nothing, right? Like genuinely nothing. Unlike Jesus Sanchez, he doesn't have the same weaknesses. Number one, he's better defensively, like I illustrated, right? But unlike Jesus Sanchez, he's great against both lefties and righties. He's got a 116 WRC plus against lefties this year and 114 against righties, right? That's very, very, very good for a team that struggles against hitting lefties. And we talk about Gavin Sheets sometimes. He's not as good at hitting against lefties. We've had a lot of struggles with Tatis hitting lefties this year. Jackson Merrill struggled last year against lefties, and he's been kind of mid against both this year, but you get my point, right? So that's really good. And it's not just a fluky thing. His career splits, actually, he's always been good against lefties, a 110 WRC plus against. So he's either 16, 10, 16% better than your regular batter against lefties, and he does struggle against righties in his career, 87 WRC plus, but he's been good this year, and at the minimum, he hits lefties based on a larger sample size. So that's really, really good. Jesus Sanchez not good against lefties. That's an interesting thing to point out. And he's also had some really nice stretches and big game moments before, whether it be for the Yankees, whether it be for the Cardinals, whether it be even for the Twins a little bit. He's got a little bit of that edge, and this is something that we can't track entirely with stats, but he just makes big plays, and he's the type of guy that has been making big moments in the playoffs. I mean, he's got an 809 OPS in the playoffs. Like, that's pretty cool. It's just a nice bonus. Not something that you only trade for, but I genuinely can't emphasize enough that Harrison Bader's been a big game moment type of player before, and you want that on a Padres team with a lot of big game type players that you might be able to trust. I think it would make awesome sense. I think it'd be a great fit. What would it cost? Now, here's the thing. I think you can give up a mixture of everyone that isn't Ethan Salas and isn't Leo DeVries especially. And I think that you could get this guy because it would just be a rental for a 31-year-old player that I doubt Minnesota's going to re-sign. I just don't see that, right? And the Padres are the worst when it comes to left field basically in all of baseball, right? With the exception of a little bit of decent defense from Brandon Lockridge and some decent hitting from Bryce Johnson as of late. That's it, right? So there's not necessarily going to be not everybody's going to be aiming for left field. The Harrison Bader, I imagine, will be a popular trade candidate, but he's a guy that I just think can really help this team. If his offense regresses, which is very, very possible, right? His offense could regress. He has been a below average offensive player 3 out of the last 4 years, not like including this one, right? He's been an 85 WRC plus guy, 69 WRC plus guy, 84 WRC plus guy, and his expected stats, not the best. 336 weighted on base and 310 expected. So maybe he's overperforming right now. He's hitting home runs in the right situation, and his strikeout rate has gone up just a tiny bit, 25% this year as opposed to 21, 17, 19, 21 the past previous years, in descending order, right? So that's what we're looking at. But at minimum, he's not going to cost much, and he's going to provide excellent defense. Not too bad. And again, remember what the Padres have been dealing with. Signing anyone that's an average player will be a huge boost specifically for this Padres team. This isn't a team that has an okay 1-win left fielder, right? This isn't the Twins, who would be like, we're not trying to trade for a left fielder. Yeah, we could get an upgrade, but it's not going to be that much of a difference for us. Instead, for the Padres, man, getting a player like this could be seismic, genuinely, for this team. And I just don't think it's going to cost too much for this farm system, right? I don't think you have to give up your top guys for him. I really don't. And that is where I'm at with the Padres this this deadline. I just don't want to give up anyone major. Who knows? Maybe they throw in, Humberto Cruz, something like that, right? Boston Bateman. But I just think you don't have to give up those top level guys. Cash Mayfield, maybe they throw him in there. They love drafting high upside high schoolers, but I just don't think for a rental journeyman-ish outfielder who usually isn't great offensive, might be overperforming offensively, you'd be trading for a defensive solid player. I just don't think you're going to have to give up too much. So I'm all in on this idea for sure. But it's not the only idea. It's not the only player I'm up for. Because we also got to talk about Marcell Ozuna, who all of a sudden is a huge trade candidate. And even though he's underperformed this year, what you would think is an underperformance, he absolutely could be an enormous get for the Padres. And I'm going to talk about why in just a second. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. And that sponsor is our friends over at The Phone. Ladies and gentlemen, get top on the phone. It said it won't be wrong. Let me tell you guys about Open Phone. If you're running a business, that was such a bad reference. Shout out Kendrick, though. You know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? Nope. You called the next one. And that's why having a reliable business line is so important, and that's why you need Open Phone, the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. And if you juggle 2 phones to keep business and personal calls separate, it's solved. Solves that problem instantly. That alone is worth it for Open Phone. You get a shared inbox, with your employees and all that sort of stuff, your whole team. You don't have to say, all right, who's the one handling this one? Don't worry. Don't worry, guys. Open Phone is also offering Locked On Padres listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's openphone, openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have extra existing numbers with another service, oh, I love this. Open Phone is going to port them over for you at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here thriving and vibing on the Locked On Padres podcast. Hopefully you all are doing lovely on this fine Wednesday morning, afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. Now, folks, it's time to talk about another candidate. We just talked about Harrison Bader and why I think he would make sense. And shouts to my guy who reached out to me on June 25th with that suggestion. I like it. Another player that I like, right? Another player that I think that a lot of people are going to talk about too. And arguably one that just as easily fits the Padres' needs. He just fits different needs that the Padres do. Harrison Bader gives you potentially a big player, doesn't cost much, right? And he's going to give you great defense. The best defensive outfield in baseball. That would be great. But if you don't go that direction, you say, you know what? I don't care. Let's just put Sheets in left field. This will be fine. He'll be okay. What we need is offense. That has been the story of this team so far this year, right? They can't hit for power. They don't drive runners in. And who better than Marcell Ozuna when it comes to power? Now, so far this year, he's been a disappointment. Like the entire Braves roster. Guys, again, I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent, but I still can't believe how bad the Braves are. Like, I haven't seen a team that was favored to be the discrepancy between how high they were regarded heading into the season versus what they've produced. I haven't seen anything like this in a long time. It's actually blowing my mind. Second highest win total behind the Dodgers, and they might not make the playoffs. Like, genuinely crazy. Anyway, Marcell Ozuna so far this year has underperformed. He's slashing .235 with a .361 on base and a .390 slugging. The slugging is especially low for a guy who hits for a lot of power, right? Historically speaking, anyway. 115 WRC plus, though, not bad overall. He's just getting a lot of value from his ability to be a good batter at the plate. But the past few years, 39 home runs in 2024, 40 home runs in 2023, and even in 2022, when he was a little bit he still at least hit 23 home runs for you, right? And in general, he has been a guy that's been a very good player for a long time now. And while the slash line isn't impressive, you would be buying a little bit low on him. There are two major things that I think are worth bringing up. His peripheral stats are excellent, is the first thing, right? He has a 335 weighted on base, which is what Harrison Bader's is right now, by the way. That's expected to go down, versus a 373 expected weighted on base, which is one of the higher marks among all kind of DHs in baseball and just general players in baseball. And we also got a quote from him literally yesterday via David O'Brien of The Athletic. In quotes, "It was my hip earlier this season, but now I feel fantastic," Ozuna said. "I just lost my confidence at the plate. I just lost my timing, and that's what I've been battling. As soon as I get my timing back, everything's coming like last year and the year before," right? He's 34 years old, and he's got a $16 million salary. So you might immediately say, "Oh, wait, Javi, I don't know, man." But the $16 million salary is a lot for this Padres team's constraints, but he's a free agent after the year. That's why you're hearing his name mentioned in trade discourse, because you can absolutely have him as your DH, and he's expected to go be better, right? This guy as your DH would create a lot more offensive opportunities for this team, where Harrison Bader, you'd be hoping that he would keep his offensive production that he's had so far. And at the minimum, you'd get great defense. While Marcell Ozuna, you're hoping, and probably with a good chance, that Ozuna's going to be better. If you look at his statistics, he's been great. He's one of the best walk guys in Major League Baseball, and in general, he isn't in below the 43rd percentile of anything. Yes, he whiffs a lot. Yes, he strikes out a decent amount, 22.6%. But that's not going to kill you for a guy that's hitting for a lot of power. His hard hit rate is still awesome, 49.2%. Right? And his expected stats, his expected batting average is a little bit higher at 262. I'll take it. His expected slugging at 478. His barrel rate is pretty good. The numbers are down a little bit, but he is a plus batter. He's not what he was last year and the year before, where he was bleeding red necessarily. But with him mentioning the injury with himself, I think that that's a little bit of a sign that this guy can absolutely be a huge piece for this team. And at 34 years old, with a bad team and an expiring contract, he's absolutely a guy that can make sense. And you could move Sheets to left field if you were to do this. So again, I'm a fan of it. Now, there are some negatives. Number one, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this because that's just not what we do typically on this show. And also when I do it, everybody gets mad at me. But yeah, a little bit of some off the field issues, right? DUI, right? The domestic violence stuff. It's not great. So if that is something worth bringing up to my listeners, that it's not great, right? But I'm just talking in terms of a vacuum, how the Padres may operate, and just from a baseball perspective, right? When it comes to that, Marcell Ozuna, it just feels like the type of player that'd be great. It's a veteran player. Veterans are very much beloved typically in this Padres culture, so you would have that. And again, having him there, and you'd have Sheets. Now all of a sudden, if Sheets is regressing, it's okay. You got a big time replacement for him in that lineup, right? And I'm also wondering, if Sheets just completely falls off a cliff, then maybe you just kind of, shift in some guys. Maybe you have to bring up Campizano every now and then. Maybe you trade for Harrison Bader too. Who knows? But unlike Gavin Sheets, one thing also with Marcell Ozuna is a great splits guy. He can hit well against both. So if you're wondering, is his numbers against lefties going to fall off, or his general numbers going to fall off? Let's say they do, and he's just more of a bench bat that you bring in every now and then. Right, giving certain lineups, giving certain pitchers, whatever Mike Schultz decides, you just have this beast at the plate who's going to drive in runs for you. How many times has it felt like we've needed a guy who could just hit some runs? How many times has it felt like if we could just get a 3-run home run here, then the bullpen and the starting pitching could take care of the rest? That would be huge. But the way I see it is the Padres can go one of two routes. You go the Ozuna route, you're aiming for an awesome bat, but it does mean Sheets will play more left field, and given his defensive deficiencies there, do you want that for the rest of the way in what should be a really tight playoff race, right? But I will say, in the playoffs, I want the bat. I don't care as much about defense in the playoffs. I care about defense when it comes to making the postseason. I think it adds up. But in general, that's kind of the benefit there. But it does mean, like I said, Sheets would have to play more left field, which he's not great at. Can he just be not horrible? Not a tall ask, right? And then if you go the Harrison Bader route, you get an electric defensive outfield, and but also much less offensive upside. And Sheets would always be your DH. So if he does fall off, you're like, oh man, what are we doing here exactly? We have to really address this. So it's really tough. You can go either way. Both are completely valid. Completely valid, as Bader has genuinely been a plus bat this year, and maybe he could keep it up for the rest of the season. But it's not a guarantee, right? If Marcell Ozuna's not just messing around and just saying that because he wants to, I don't know, just have an excuse for how he's performing this year, I don't know, then that's where we are. Could they trade for both? I just don't know what you do with Sheets after, right? You would put Marcell Ozuna, he'd be the full-time, more or less, DH. You could also have Sheets, though. Maybe you give Marcell Ozuna every now and then when you give him a day off. You take him out when it's a left or a righty, That way Sheets can really excel against whatever righty starting pitcher you have. So trading for both, it's unlikely. I'm just saying you probably could because of the expiring contracts, because of their age and all that sort of stuff. Being rentals, I think that you can get them. But guys like Jarren Duran, guys like Luis Robert, I know he's been bad, but they might ask for more and be like, fine, we're just gonna keep him for next year. And when he's great again, then you guys are gonna give us more. Like, I don't know. Right? I don't know what they're gonna do exactly. And then Harrison Bader, same thing. So look, I just think both of these options would be great. I'd be splendid fine baseball wise if they were to acquire any of these guys. I'd be totally all in on that. And I just don't think they'd have to give up too many prospects. So that's why these guys to me make infinitely more sense than the Jarren Duran move. The Jarren Duran move, I know that that's what Preller wants. I'm still scared that we're going to hear they gave up Leo DeVries for him and Ethan Salas. I'm really nervous about that. I would not want that. Yes, it'd be fun, but kills your farm system again. And it's for one guy when just getting a decent player could be a huge boon for this team. And not to mention, this team doesn't have the same vibe it did last year where everything was working. Musgrove was working great. Darvish was a guy that you could hope for in the playoffs. You had Michael King being an all-star. You have Dylan Cease being an all-star. And then you have a pretty good bullpen. And then you have an even better offense. The Jackson Merrill year. You have Manny Machado playing a lot better. You have Jurickson Profar. And you had there was just more good with that team. More firing on all cylinders, that it made a little bit more sense to go a little bit more aggressive at the deadline. Well, this year, it's still a team that doesn't do well against the best teams in baseball and still has some questions with, are you Darvish and Michael King going to be healthy? Those questions are why I lean towards doing some good solid moves that you give up some farm pieces, but not too much. That's just my opinion, though. Let me know, guys, in the comments or on Twitter, whatever you want to reach out to, what you think and what other players possibly you could want me to talk about as potential candidates for the Padres to trade for. But that about does it, regardless, for today's edition of Locked On Padres podcast, guys. The only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. I am in San Diego at the time of this recording. So, folks, get ready for some fun episodes upcoming. It's going to be a blast. Or say hi to me at Comic-Con or the game on Monday, the 28th. Feel free to reach out. But until that next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.